Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Alex Wolf and Gavin Shaw here, and we are continuing your mailbag questions. How else but by talking about the NCAA tournament on the first day of the tournament? We had a great question that asked us to pick our five of our favorite or best Knicks of NCAA tournament fame. So we go through the best guys of the NCAA tournament to ever don a Knicks uniform, and then go ahead and pick teams. And then there's no way of telling if they're head to head, but you guys could always tell us what you think. And then we end the show by talking about if Derrick Rose should find his way back into the Knicks rotation. So that's all coming up next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by Ultimate Basketball GM. If you've ever dreamed of becoming an NBA GM and managing your own basketball franchise, this game is definitely for you. To download the game, just visit ultimatebasketballgm.com or look it up on your favorite app store. Our listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On in all caps in the game. And we want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us a part of your daily routine. And who are we, though? I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. He's Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And Gavin, as I alluded to in the intro, where else would we start on the first day of the NCAA tournament than a great NCAA tournament related question that we got asked to us by our buddy Bugsy Sig on Twitter at Bugsy Sig. And Bugsy wants to know Knicks all-time NCAA tournament team, ? Which five Knicks, past and or present, had the best March Madness runs? So Gavin, there's a lot of names. Like the Knicks, for all of their faults as a professional basketball team, have employed a lot of really formerly great college players over the years. So where would you like to start as far as candidates before we eventually pick our teams?
I mean, I think there's no place to start outside of Patrick Ewing. Arguably like a top 5 to 7 player in the history of college basketball. He only played 3 years because freshmen didn't play back then. And he led Georgetown to 3 championship game appearances. They only went 2-1 in those title games, famously losing to Michael Jordan and North Carolina. And of course, Villanova in one of the greatest upsets in the history of college basketball. And Ewing very famously started off that North Carolina game. I think he picked up 5 goaltending violations, and that was intentional from head coach John Thompson as a way to intimidate North Carolina. Unfortunately, when you got Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, I think James Worthy may have been on that team as well. Hard to intimidate that group, but Ewing just flat out one of the best college big men ever. Teams essentially had no answer for him. But if not for MJ and just an all-time upset from Nova, probably goes down with 3 titles in 3 years.
Yeah, and if you want to go to another guy that's one of the best players in recent memory to suit up for the Knicks, you also got to go with Carmelo Anthony, a brief college resume, but a decorated one. One and done, wins a title at Syracuse, averaged, I believe, around 22 and 10 in college. And maybe more importantly, importantly for his legacy, did so well at Syracuse that it really made it almost a debate as to who should go number 1 in a draft that featured LeBron James, which is really saying something. So, I mean, they both looked like after that run by Carmelo as a freshman at Syracuse, they both looked like they were absolute can't miss prospects. As we've seen, to varying degrees, they both were. I mean, Carmelo did turn into one of the best scorers that the NBA has ever seen, as like a pure scorer. And, but yeah, his legacy started at Syracuse with a title in 1 year. So pretty solid resume to just be a one and done and also win a national title.
Yeah. The next guy I had on my list was someone who did not win a championship. It was Bill Bradley. And I'll link him with someone else on my list, and that is Cassie Russell, because those two guys had just a number of incredible battles throughout college. Their most famous game, if I'm getting this right, wasn't actually the Final Four game they played during the regular season at the 13th. I'm reading this straight from the New York Times. Eastern College Athletic Conference Holiday Festival, when Michigan was the number one team in the country, and Princeton, I think, was very good, but was mostly just Bradley and the Bradleyettes. And Bradley scored 41 points in that game with 4.5 minutes left. They were up 76-63. And at one point, it got the lead all the way up to 14. And then in 65 seconds, Michigan ripped off a 16-1 run, wiped out a 10-point deficit in a total of, again, just over a minute. But those two were dueling kind of all year for the best player in college basketball. And Russell, I think, put up right around 30 points per game. Bradley put up right around 30 points per game. And what's so cool is that game was actually at Madison Square Garden. They were future teammates. And if you read the all-time book, When the Garden Was Eden, it talks a lot about how they kind of had to get over it when they were in the NBA together, because they were, like, I guess at that point, college basketball rivalries were real because they were formed over the number of years. And they didn't really like each other when they first came into the league. And Cassie kind of felt like, I beat this dude in college. Like, he's only getting preference as like sort of a white savior. And it's, I mean, I don't know how much truth there was to that, but it certainly was a situation where there was a real bit of tension there. And I think it's kind of cool how that little bit of March Madness links into Knicks history, because maybe it's because guys leave college earlier, but it doesn't feel like you'd ever have a college rivalry that would leak into the NBA now, or it's a very rare occurrence.
Yeah, especially with any sort of animosity like that. And it's just like the difference of, college is just like a stop now, rather than, like something that a lot of guys take as much pride in as they used to. Like now, college is just the necessary vehicle to get them to the NBA, versus back then it was like, no, like you're going because also there was like a decent chance that, maybe some guys back then would choose not being a basketball player, as for a living, because A, there was way less teams, but then B, like it didn't pay as well. So if you could be like a doctor or something, you might be that instead of a basketball player, depending on what your priorities were. So yeah, that was like, for a lot of guys, college was it. That was like, the alpha and omega to them in their careers. So, but as far as, next guys to get into, I think Derrick Rose, you got to talk about. I mean, another number one pick that has eventually found his way to the Knicks, that was just fantastic in college. I mean, really, in my opinion, I mean, I know that Calipari was coaching for long before this, but Derrick Rose, I feel like, almost single-handedly like created the John Calipari that we know today, and like the star factory of Kentucky. But played for him at Memphis, not at Kentucky, before Calipari got the Kentucky job, and just was an absolute dynamo. Did not win a title, but made a Final Four in his sole season with Memphis, and made the title game, and then missed a crucial free throw at the end of the second half, which then sent that game to overtime, where Memphis would end up losing.
Yeah.
That said, still a pretty stellar one-year legacy, not dissimilar to Carmelo Anthony, and we'd probably be talking about him more like Melo had they just won that title game. But otherwise, just a fantastic one-year stint at Memphis for Derrick Rose.
Yeah, and he was a monster in the Final Four game against a UCLA team that, if I'm remembering correctly, that was Russell Westbrook and Kevin Love on that team, and he played incredible defense, had 25 points, 9 rebounds, was a miracle shot from Mario Chalmers away from being a national champion, even though it would have been revoked in retrospect because of some questionable SAT stuff for Derrick Rose. But I'm with you just in terms of how memorable he was. Like for me, somewhere from like 2002 to 2000, maybe 13, is kind of my golden era of really loving college basketball. And I don't know why, because obviously we still get a lot of stars in college basketball, but it felt bigger and it felt like the talent was better. Like I just can't remember a freshman. Maybe Zion was the last guy, but someone like Rose Alex, who I just watched him play, and his athleticism just kind of blew me away. I was like, all right, this guy, like he should have gone straight to the NBA. He never really belonged in college in any way. But I'm with you on Derrick Rose, and I know the first guy on your list was a current Knick in Jalen Brunson.
Yeah, and I'll talk about Brunson in just a moment, along with a bunch of other guys before we make our final selections on our teams. But good news, guys! If you wanna do something where you could pick your own team and do it in a game form, and perhaps draft the next Derrick Rose out of fake college in a video game on your phone, you should check out Ultimate Pro Basketball GM. Because if you've ever dreamed of being an NBA GM and managing a basketball franchise, your dream can come true. And this game is definitely for you. You manage every strategic aspect of your team and play through the season and lead your team to glory. You're responsible for hiring the right coaches and assistants, trading and training players, making draft picks, navigating your franchise through free agency and the draft, and all the ups and downs of a season. And all this is in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Pro Basketball GM is completely free and playable offline and can be played on the go as you want and when you want to. And I've been playing this game. This is not just advertisement. I mean, obviously it is an advertisement, but I've actually been really enjoying this game. I used to play this game on computer, just like a browser-based game called Basketball GM. It's like very text-based, but it's like all like management and stuff. And I literally play that for hours and hours and hours and hours. And I'm now playing Ultimate Pro Basketball GM for hours and hours and hours and hours because it's very similar, except for I would say even more challenging. So if you like a challenge and you love all the nerdy, like building a team, developing guys, spending points, whatever, this game's for you. And it's the best part is that you do have to grind a bit, but it's certainly not pay to win, which is always important with mobile games. So Locked On Knicks listeners, you guys can get 100% free boost to your franchise when you use the promo code Locked On in the game store. So make sure to check it out. To download the game, just visit probasketballgm.com and then scan the code or look it up in app stores. That's right, probasketballgm.com, or check it out in your favorite app store. Ultimate Basketball GM, start your dynasty today. All right, Gavin, we're back to continue talking about the best Knicks in NCAA history. And yeah, Jalen Brunson was the first guy that came to my mind. And I mean, I know it's like he just got on the Knicks, so, you know, it's like, oh, this is like so soon to be having him on these sort of lists. But you know what? Hey, I don't care. He's on the Knicks, and he's one of the best college basketball players of all time. A two-time champion. He won Player of the Year. He played with two, as you pointed out to me, I almost mistakenly was like, because I'm admittedly not a huge college basketball guy. So this stuff is always a struggle for me to remember. But I was like, oh yeah, he played with Josh Hart and Archie Diacono, who, you know, they like won a couple titles together. And you were like, no, the second one, those two aren't on it. Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And that makes it all the more impressive, to be completely honest, that as a freshman, he was on a title team and played a role on that team. He averaged almost 10 points per game. And then by the time that he was a senior, he won another championship and was the National Player of the Year, and just posted absolutely gaudy numbers and really was like the true leader of that team and like the heart and soul of Villanova that year. So Brunson definitely deserves consideration on this list because he had an absolutely fantastic college career.
Yeah, it was. I mean, those teams were great, and they kind of had different styles. I mean, the first Villanova team was a little bit more, if my memory serves, just very physical with Chris Jenkins, with Josh Hart, with Brunson, with Archie Diacono as sort of the veteran floor general of that team. And the second one was just hyper explosive because they had, of course, they had Brunson as a junior. They had Mikal Bridges. Dante DiVincenzo had that iconic championship performance where he was just raining fire, living up to his high school nickname of Delaware Michael Jordan. But yeah, so maybe some future Knicks on that second championship team. But Alex, you had another really good one here, and that is Kemba Walker, who I can't believe maybe because I wanted to blot out that he was his entire last season with the Knicks, but I can't believe I didn't think of him. I mean, same thing with I'll spoil another one, Joakim Noah, two guys who had just terrible Knicks careers, but you can make a case. I mean, right there with Ewing for the best college basketball runs. I mean, Kemba, I don't even think I need to go into the details. Like cardiac Kemba, that was one of the best March Madness runs just in the history of the sport. Like Knicks, no Knicks, anyone. First, like the undefeated run through the Big East tournament, then ultimately leading them to a title. I think it was over Butler that year, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, that was spectacular. And then Joakim Noah. I mean, those teams were all timers with Joakim Noah and Al Horford and Torian Green. They had, was it Lee Humphrey? Like
Corey
the small
Brewer.
Shooter on that team. Corey Brewer was the small forward. I mean, that is just, I mean, you understand how they won 2 in a row. Just absurd. You have 2 guys who made multiple all defensive teams in the NBA as your 2 front court members. That just feels like borderline unstoppable on paper. So those guys, they peaked in March, not on the Knicks.
Yeah. I think I almost put Corey Brewer on this list too, because I could have swore that he had a cup of coffee with the Knicks for like 5 minutes.
Didn't he? He didn't?
I don't know. I was looking at his basketball reference page. I didn't
Yeah.
see New York on there. I thought he did.
So wrong. Yeah.
Did we get Mandela affected into this?
Oh, wow. This is a big moment for the pod.
Yeah. I mean, I thought Corey Brewer played for the Knicks for like 5 minutes, but maybe he was just like passing through in a trade, like was a Knick for like 5 seconds and then got shipped back out.
Yeah.
I don't know.
He was not on the Knicks. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know why I thought that he was, but
Yeah.
I mean, I know Ronnie Brewer was, which was totally different player, obviously, but
Yeah.
I thought that Corey Brewer was. I can't. That's so weird. It's so weird that we both thought that too.
Yeah. You know what? I'm looking. I'm sure this is very entertaining for people listening. Like, I feel like there was someone in the KP trade who I'm conflating him with. Wesley Matthews. I think I'm conflating him with Wesley Matthews in my mind, even though Brewer was a few. I don't know if you're doing the same thing, but I think that was who I was thinking of.
Yeah, I thought it was a different like Phil Jackson era move for some reason, that they got him and he like just had a cup of tea with the Knicks, or it was like a 10-day contract or like something. I don't know. Anyway, a couple other names to throw out there that were also on the Knicks. Jerry Lucas, pretty big one. He had a title and I believe 3 Final Four appearances in his career. Considered one of the best players in just like basketball history, period, between his college resume and his pro resume, mostly stuff they did before he got to the Knicks, but then obviously was part of the last Knicks championship team.
I think Alex, real quick, I think he was also maybe like high school's like all-time leading scorer when he retired, like nationally. Like he was great. He was a really good NBA player, but one of the better prep careers that anyone has ever had too.
Interesting. I never knew that about him either. I know the phone book thing though. That you could apparently just memorize pages and pages of the phone book at a time.
He scored just under 2,500 points in his high school career, which today isn't like that crazy, but they had a 76-1 record, 3 state Final Fours, 2 state titles. Not too shabby.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Jalen Rose, who was with the Knicks for some time, had 2 Final Four appearances with the Fab Five. Marcus Camby, 1 Final Four appearance with UMass, but I think that's pretty impressive because UMass has never really had much relevance since then, and not a big program. So, and Marcus Camby was a really dominant college player. So, Mike Bibby had a title with Arizona, and Larry Johnson, 2 Final Fours and 1 title with the UNLV Running Rebels. So, our cup runneth over here, Gavin. So I'll throw it to you first. What would be your team if you're going to build a all Knicks best NCAA team?
Yeah, so maybe this is taking the exercise the wrong way. Like I did it. I guess because it's a 2-part question, right? All-time NCAA tournament team, and then which 5 Knicks had the best March Madness run. So I took the second part of the question more seriously, where I'm not trying to build the best team here. I just picked the 5 best guys. And I kind of put them in lineup order. So for me, it would be Kemba, Melo, Bill Bradley, Joakim Noah, and Patrick Ewing. One thing I forgot to mention with Bill Bradley, back in the day, they had a 3rd place game, which is kind of wild, but he scored 58 points in that 3rd place game. And I can't remember, maybe Bill Walton or Kareem, but I can't really remember anyone just having a scoring performance like that in a Final Four adjacent game. Kemba's run is all time. Melo, I mean, just as doing it as a freshman is unique out of these guys. Noah, the 2 titles, and Ewing, best combination of dominance and making it 3 times. So that would be, I think that team fits together pretty well. Maybe I would add in a little, maybe I'd replace Kemba with Rose just for the athleticism. But you know what? Honestly, I kind of like that team. You got a lot of shooting, and the rim protection between Noah and Ewing is crazy. So I'm kind of talking myself into it as we go.
I am gonna go with a different team. I feel almost sacrilegious leaving Kemba off because Kemba was just so fun and was definitely like a big part of like he was doing his thing when I was in college, which was kind of cool. Like watching him do stuff that I could never in my wildest dreams imagine doing at the very same age. But that said, maybe just for the sake of being different, I'm going to take almost a totally different team. I'll do Jalen Brunson. I'll give our current guy some love here. Actually, two current guys, because I'm also going to say Derrick Rose. So I'd say Brunson and Rose. I would envision them being sort of like a thunder and lightning kind of combo. Brunson being, like more finesse based, and Rose being more just like pure speed and dominant athleticism based. And I also feel like in college they would not get cooked on the perimeter as much as I would maybe worry about in the pros. If those two, which is why we probably don't see them play together much as pros right now. And then I have Melo as well. I don't know. I just think Melo's one of the best college basketball players ever, just for that one season. And then I'm going Larry Johnson, just because. I mean, he had some really solid numbers for UNLV, and I think won a Player of the Year. Is the Naismith Award the Player of the Year? That's it, right?
Yeah, that's a regular season player. Well, okay, wait, but the Wooden Award is also for the Player of the Year, but I think both.
Guess what?
Yeah,
he won
both are Player of the Year. Okay.
Guess what? He won both of them one year.
Double Player of the Year.
And I think it was the year that UNLV went undefeated and then lost in the final. But he averaged 20.
Bobby Hurley of all people.
Yes, but he lost, or he had 23 points, 11 boards, 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block that year, on 66% shooting from the field, and actually 35% from 3 in college. Wow. Solid stuff. So he translates well to the modern game. And then of course you got to go Patrick Ewing as the center, the all-timer, another one of just the absolute best college basketball players of all time. So that's my lineup: Brunson, Rose, Melo, LJ, and Ewing. I don't know, head to head, I feel like this would be a really entertaining game. I gotta say,
set it up.
Yeah, maybe we ought to run this through. Get an old copy of like NCAA Hoops 2011 or whatever the last one they made was, and we could set this all up. But pretty fun stuff. But anyway, we've got a couple other questions to get to before we wrap this up. Funny enough, Derrick Rose and Jalen Brunson's names will come up again in our next segment when we talk about whether Derrick Rose should be getting some more playing time from a mailbag question, and also an interesting Quentin Grimes trade proposal in just a moment as well. But first, I do just have to remind everybody that today's episode is brought to you by Built Bar. And speaking of March Madness, man, what an episode for March Madness right now. The Built March Madness bracket is here. And we know you guys have a favorite Built Bar or Puff, and now's your time to make it count. Go to BuiltMarchMadness.com to vote for your favorites. And I'm not going to sway on this. I have a lot of favorite Built Bar flavors, but I'm going to be voting for coconut almonds, my absolute favorite all time. Tastes just like Almond Joy. I freaking love it. And I think you should vote for it too, because it's really good. And if you want to support the Knicks to win, well, wait, I don't totally understand what this ad copy wants me to say, but yeah, sure. A vote for coconut almond is a vote for the Knicks. And when you vote for your favorite bar or puff, you'll be entered into a drawing where 50 lucky Locked On listeners will get a free box of Built. Not only that, but one Locked On fan will win a 12-month subscription to Built to have Built's best bars or puffs delivered monthly straight to your door. You got to try Built. Built is the best protein bar ever. Seriously, they're really amazing. And they're like somehow good for you, even though they taste like you're eating a candy bar. And that's because they are low in sugar. They're covered in 100% real chocolate and super high in protein. Most bars have around 17 grams. So run to BuiltMarchMadness.com right now to vote for your favorite bar or puff and pick up a box while you're there. You can vote every day in March. So hop in and support your pick.
Yeah, Alex, and we are also just past the midway point of the NBA season. Now is the perfect time to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because new customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 as bonus back. If your first bet doesn't win, just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scores and threes drained. Alex, I know you love a parlay, so I am going to throw one at you. I'm going to say Emmanuel Quickly winning sixth man of the year and the New York Knicks getting out of the first round of the playoffs. I mean, if you're a true Blue Knicks fan, I think that's one you got to go with. Plus, FanDuel even lets you combine your bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Alex, and with that, we are back on Locked On Knicks. Connor Toolin gave us a question on YouTube, and let that be a message for all of you for future mailbags or just in general. If you ever want to ask us a question on YouTube, we will usually make a post on YouTube, which is something you can do now, which is really cool, and leave room for you guys to comment there. So just be on the lookout for that for future mailbags. And just in general, if you ever have a question for us you want to see answered on the pod. But Connor Toolin wants to know, why doesn't Tibbs give D Rose some run with Brunson out? I think that's an interesting question, Alex, because it's something that particularly in that Clippers game, like I kind of was wondering myself, and I think there have been moments where this team has been starved for creation. Maybe we got our answer though with what Deuce McBride did last night, and if Tibbs has been seeing some of that just in shoot-arounds, and I'm sure this team isn't practicing very often, but whenever they do practice, obviously what Deuce does defensively, Rose cannot come close to replicating this season. And offensively, Deuce is maybe evening the gap a little bit as his shooting continues to get better. But I don't know. I think Evan Fournier's been more so the name I've thrown out there, but I wouldn't mind like 10 minutes of Derrick Rose a game if Brunson's out for much longer, depending on the opponent and depending on how the team is doing offensively. But what did you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have too much issue with Rose not playing at the moment. Like, of all the things that could possibly bother me with the rotations on this team or whatever, that doesn't really strike me, just because I think the thing is, like, Rose earlier this year wasn't even really looking that efficient, and like the creation I just feel like isn't really there. Unfortunately, I think he sort of hit something similar to the same wall that, and I'm not saying that he's been this bad, but similar to the athletic decline of what we saw with Kemba Walker last year, where it's like, I just don't know how well he can get by guys anymore like he used to, like even 2 years ago, you know what I mean? Or even like last year. It just seems like there's something not quite there anymore with his ability to like create the amount of separation that he was 2 years ago when he was so integral to the Knicks making the playoffs and finishing as the 4 seed. So I guess that's my main answer. And if they needed just like, funny enough, I think that one of the main things that he could offer if they really needed it was just like pure spot up shooting. And I almost think that in many ways, because he actually still kind of tries on defense at least, like, and does a better job of not making like the kind of boneheaded plays that Fournier does sometimes. Or like if push came to shove and they reached another situation where it was like, oh, Evan Fournier might have to see minutes again, then I might be like, okay, yeah, why not try Derrick Rose instead of Evan Fournier? And let's see how that goes, because Rose has been so good as a spot up shooter. Like he really, I mean, at times was a total knockdown shooter, like from three, from spotting up the last few years. And that goes back to 2 years ago as well, when he was doing that so well, working off of Julius Randle. But I think the main thing, if I was going to especially like look at this, is the defensive concerns I think are just too much too. It's so difficult now at this point with where he's at defensively to justify playing him over a Deuce McBride, over a Quentin Grimes, which is who would probably have to lose some minutes along with Deuce if this were to happen, and especially over Emmanuel Quickly, who's honestly like taking a real like kind of star turn right now. So I think that's the main thing, is like, who would it take away from? And if the answer is it would take away anything from Quickly, from Grimes, or from Deuce, even if Grimes and Deuce are being somewhat inconsistent with their shot, Rose like earlier this year was kind of inconsistent with his shot as well, which is what saw him fall out of the rotation. And so if he's not going to offer that on a consistent basis, then it's like, well, you may as well just have the guys out there that are going to be like all world defenders. And I think it's probably better to just leave Rose on the bench in that case.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, it's partially in terms of minutes, but partially just in terms of what role he's going to play when he's on the court. And we saw him and Quickly kind of interchange being the primary ball handler. But at this point, I mean, there's no question that Quickly is, I mean, not even taking into account that Quickly is light years better as a defender. I don't think there's any question that Quickly's the better offensive player at this point. And if you have Derrick Rose on the floor, I think just because of who he is and his resume, there's some pressure there to put the ball in his hands. And I have no doubt that, and Alex, I mean, who knows what, I mean, fingers crossed times a million, like this doesn't happen. But if there's some kind of injury in the playoffs, I mean, I think Tibbs knows that Rose can come in and isn't going to be afraid of the moment. Like to your point, like it wouldn't shock me. Like he could come in, like Quickly could turn an ankle and Rose could come with 8 minutes left in the fourth quarter of a playoff game and hit the game winning three, right? Like he's still that guy to some extent, where especially like you were talking about his spot up threes, like he's gotten so much better throughout his career at kind of the self-created like pull-up threes, particularly in transition. Like he is just deadly at that. But the reason I might even advocate for Fournier over him is because you don't want to take the ball out of Quickly's hands. You obviously never want to take the ball out of Jalen Brunson's hands. And Fournier is just kind of a pure spot-up shooter. And I think when he did get a second chance this year, when the Knicks were just bombarded by injuries, I thought his defense was much better than it was at the earlier in the season, where it was just in my opinion, maybe since his rookie year, just about the worst it has ever been in Fournier's career. But man, Fournier, I can't remember. I think it was Josh Okogie maybe who was talking about Fournier just giving him the business when he was a rookie. Like I still think Fournier offensively is still in his prime. For whatever reason, got up to a terrible start this year, but in a pinch in the playoffs or to end the regular season, he's someone who could give them good minutes. And I think you look back at a game like the Hornets, I think that game was very winnable. If Tibbs had decided to play one of Fournier or Rose against a team like that, and maybe down the stretch of the season, I would at least like to see them as deep reinforcements on some nights, just to give a break to some of the starters who are playing crazy minutes. But Alex, this question is probably purely hypothetical unless there's an injury, because Tom Thibodeau likes his tight rotation, and overall, obviously, that was sort of the thing that turned around the Knicks season, right? When they went to a 9-man rotation.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to be seeing Derrick Rose back in the rotation anytime soon. Again, if there's anything that tells you how much Tibbs loves the guys that he's currently rolling with, and like by like inserting Deuce McBride back into the rotation, who had lost his spot to Josh Hart and all that stuff, it's that he's sitting Derrick Rose to do so, because the love affair between Derrick Rose and Tom Thibodeau is legendary. And so if he's gone this long and stuck to his guns at that, I don't see him really changing that anytime soon, unless there was a drastic injury reason to do so. We did have one other question we were going to potentially get to in this episode, but I think we're going to save that for the next episode now, for tomorrow. So little teaser, we had a Quentin Grimes trade proposal for someone that could potentially add some shooting to the Knicks in this coming off season. Plus, in our next episode, we'll also talk about the Knicks offense and their defense. If they're giving up too many threes, if they're isoing too much. We had a question related to that, and a little more about Julius Randle, and also how we would celebrate a Knicks championship if they would win one. So that's coming on tomorrow's episode. But for today, I think we can call it a day. So thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you tomorrow to finish off these mailbag questions. Thanks, and talk to you guys tomorrow. Peace.